A piercing siren ripped through Wright-Patterson Air Base. One F-22 was down. The pilot had ejected and armed groups were racing to the crash site inside a hangar. A mechanic froze the wrench slipping from her hand. Everyone thought she was just a civilian. But with only minutes left, command had no pilot to launch. All eyes turned to her. And in that moment, Madison Hail knew that if she stepped into that cockpit, the secret she had hidden for 11 years would be exposed. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and courage are told. Let's uncover what really happened. The siren tore across Wright-Patterson Air Base like a blade through steel inside a dim hangar. Madison Hail dropped the wrench in her hand and froze. For a heartbeat, the only sound she heard was her own pulse racing. She was just a civilian mechanic, or at least that's what everyone thought. For 4 years on the base, she was always early, always efficient, always invisible. The crew joked that she had X-ray vision for engines. No one ever asked where she had learned that kind of instinct. No one pressed her on why a woman in her 20s seemed to carry decades of technical experience in her hands. It was easier to believe she was just gifted and natural. But Madison knew better. Every turn of a bolt, every calibration she made it, was all a reminder of what she was trying to forget. She kept her head down, hiding from the very world that had once defined her. The siren wailed again, sharper, closer. Tools clattered as crews ran toward the flight line, shouting updates she tried not to hear. Madison stayed put, staring at the transport engine in front of her, willing herself to remain invisible. Then came the heavy footsteps. Chief Master Sergeant Alan Briggs, head of ground operations, loomed beside her with a clipboard in hand. His face was tight, the lines of a man who had seen too many emergencies to mistake this one for routine. "Hail, Briggs," barked voice edged with urgency. "Drop what you're doing. We need to talk." She wiped her hands on a rag, forcing calm. "What's going on?" Briggs glanced around to make sure no one was close enough to hear. Raptor 7 went dark 20 minutes ago. The pilot ejected over forest terrain south of Dayton. His voice dropped lower. That aircraft was carrying a classified intel package. "We cannot let it fall into enemy hands." The words landed like a weight in her chest. Still, Madison shook her head, searching for distance. "That's pilot business. I fix engines. That's all." Briggs didn't move. His eyes locked onto hers the way only a seasoned senior NCO could read someone. "You think I haven't noticed the way you understand these jets like you've lived inside them? Don't insult me." She tried to laugh it off, but her throat was dry. "I just read manuals." "Pay attention, that's all." The siren shrieked again, echoing off steel walls. This time it wasn't just warning, it was command. Briggs leaned closer, voice low and urgent. "The rescue team needs air cover. We're short one pilot. Backups are down with food poisoning. Command wants a fourth bird in the sky." He held her in place with his stare. Madison took a step back, rag trembling in her hand. "You've lost your mind. I don't fly, I fix." Her words were flat defensive, but her pulse was surging like thunder in her ears. Briggs didn't let go. "You've been hiding, Hail. I don't know why, but I see it plain as day. You don't talk like a mechanic. You talk like a flyer, and right now we need a flyer." The hangar door rattled as jets roared outside, engines spinning for launch. She turned her head, watching through the gap. 3 Raptors sat ready on the tarmac canopies, open pilots strapping in. The 4th bay stood empty, the jet waiting. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. Every instinct screamed to run, to keep her head down, to stay invisible. But the air around her pulsed with urgency, with inevitability. Briggs's radio crackled alive. "Sergeant, we need that backup pilot airborne in 12 minutes. Repeat, 12 minutes. Search window closing fast." Static swallowed the line, then cut out. Briggs didn't blink. He looked at her as if she were the only option left on Earth. "Hail, you've got one chance to come clean. Have you ever flown an F-22 silence stretched between them?" The smell of jet fuel burned in the air, mixing with the sound of distant afterburners spooling up. Madison's hands tightened into fists. For 11 years she had buried the truth. For 11 years she had lived as a ghost in coveralls, convincing herself she was nothing more than a mechanic. Now in the space of seconds, that fragile cover threatened to collapse. She met Briggs's gaze, eyes dark with everything unspoken. The siren blared one last time, demanding an answer she could not avoid. Time was bleeding away, and with it the life she had built in shadows. Colonel David Rohr strode in, boots echoing with authority. His presence cut through the chaos like a knife. Everyone stepped aside. Briggs straightened instinctively, but the colonel's eyes locked on Madison. He studied her coveralls, her grease-stained gloves, her face caught between fear and defiance. Then he turned to Briggs. "Tell me you're not suggesting what I think you're suggesting," Rohr said, voice hard. Briggs hesitated, then gestured at her. "She's the only option left." "Sir?" Rohr's jaw tightened. "A mechanic. You're telling me a civilian wrench-turner is our backup pilot?" He pivoted sharply, squaring up with Madison. "Answer me directly," he demanded. "Have you ever flown a fighter?" The silence stretched until she heard herself whisper, "Yes." Rohr didn't flinch. What type? Her throat constricted, but the truth slipped free. F-16s, F-22s. Enough to matter. The words hung in the air like a detonator. Briggs exhaled relief and vindication flickering across his face. Rohr stepped closer, his tone shifting. "Then you'll prove it right here. Right now." The colonel blinked once. She hadn't stumbled, not even once. Her answers were too sharp, too lived in. Rohr looked at Briggs, then back at her. "That isn't textbook knowledge. That's combat muscle memory." Madison's hands curled into fists. "I told you I'm a mechanic," she muttered. Her gaze darted toward the open bay where Raptors crouched in the morning light. Engines howled, ready to launch. "If I step in that cockpit," she whispered, "everything changes." Rohr's reply was ice cold. "Everything already has." She turned away, trying to breathe, but her chest was tight. The air stank of jet fuel, of inevitability. Her reflection stared back from the polished fuselage of a transport plane, part mechanic, part ghost. Briggs pressed a flight bag into her hands. Her old gear was inside, pulled from some forgotten storage locker. The weight nearly buckled her knees. In the corner of the hangar, lockers banged open. She stepped inside, pulling the door shut behind her. The room went silent except for her breathing. The flight suit felt alien against her skin at first. Fingers trembled as she zipped it up the fabric, whispering memories she had buried for over a decade. Her chest rose and fell faster with each breath. She paused, staring at the helmet resting in the bag. The visor gleamed under the fluorescent light. Her hands shook as she lifted it. A deep breath. Then she lowered the helmet over her head, and the tremor in her body stilled. Her shoulders straightened, her spine aligned. Her eyes, once clouded with fear, sharpened into steel. When Madison stepped out, she wasn't the same woman who had walked in. The mechanic was gone. The pilot specter was back. Outside, 3 Raptors were already rolling to the line. Crew chiefs scrambled with checklists, fueling trucks peeling away. Time was evaporating. Colonel Rohr pointed her to Raptor 4. "Shadow 4. "That's your bird," he said, using the emergency call sign, briefing on the move. Waiting near the jet was Lightning Flight 3 combat-ready pilots' helmets tucked under their arms. They turned as she approached. The mission leader, Lieutenant Aaron Vaughn, fixed her with a cold stare. Tall, sharp-featured confidence radiating from every movement. She didn't bother to hide her suspicion. "You're the emergency fill-in?" Vaughn asked flatly. Madison nodded, one's helmet under her arm. Vaughn stepped closer, her voice low and dangerous. "I don't know who vouched for you, but hear me clearly. If you screw this up, if any one of us dies because of you—" She paused, eyes burning. "I'll drag what's left of you to a court-martial myself." The words hit like a knife point. Madison didn't answer. She simply slid the helmet into place, visor reflecting Vaughn's glare. No tremor, no hesitation now. The ground shook as engines ignited. A whistle from the crew chief cut the air. Time to mount up. Madison climbed the ladder, every rung echoing the years she had denied herself. She lowered into the seat. The cockpit wrapped around her like an old memory reawakened. Fingers moved without thought, flipping switches, running checks. Her lips pressed together, silent, controlled. Outside, Vaughn's voice crackled over the intercom, brisk and professional. "Lightning Flight, prepare for launch. Shadow 4. You'd better be real." Madison's hand settled on the throttle for the first time in 11 years. It felt like it belonged there. Her pulse slowed, steady as steel. This was no longer a choice. It was inevitability. Spectre was airborne again, whether the world was ready or not. Engines screamed as the Raptors rolled onto the runway. The tarmac vibrated under the raw thrust, sending shockwaves through the air. Inside the tower, Captain Marcus Lane adjusted his headset. He had worked hundreds of launches. He could tell rookies from veterans by a single radio call. When Shadow 4's voice cut in, he froze. Wright-Patterson Tower, Shadow 4, requesting system check before departure. The tone was calm, clip steady. Not the sound of a panicked substitute. It was the voice of someone who had lived combat. Lane frowned, signaling to his assistant. "Who the hell is Shadow 4 pull the roster?" The name came back seconds later. Madison Hail, civilian contractor. Lane's gut tightened. Civilians didn't sound like that. Not on his frequency. He kept his tone neutral. Shadow 4 cleared for system check. Confirm when ready. Her reply came back crisp without hesitation. Engine 1 and 2 green. Vectoring calibrated. Stealth configuration confirmed. Lane leaned back in his chair unsettled. Whoever she was, she knew the aircraft inside out. On the runway, the formation lined up. Lightning 1, Lightning 2, Lightning 3, then Shadow 4 sliding into position. The final bird completing the diamond. Lightning flight cleared for takeoff. Runway 18. Winds calm. Lane watched through glass as the Raptors thundered down the strip. One by one, afterburners roared fire pouring into the morning sky. Madison felt the jet respond beneath her. The stick moved like an extension of her body, natural and fluid. 11 years gone, yet nothing had faded. Altitude climbed Ohio, sprawling below like a green patchwork. Her visor reflected endless sky HUD symbols, sharpening her vision. Shadow 4 was airborne. The chatter began as they crossed into the search grid. Lightning 1 outlined the planned standard sweep broad pattern. Madison's eyes narrowed. Too slow. Too wide. She pressed her mic. Recommend high-low division. 2 ships maintain altitude overwatch. 2 run terrain following passes at staggered intervals. The channel went quiet for a beat. Vaughn's voice returned taut with surprise. That's solid. Lightning flight implements Shadow 4's recommendation. Madison adjusted throttle, dropping into the low element. Tree lines blurred beneath her, the jet skimming just above canopy. Every vibration, every shift of terrain registered in her bones. It felt like coming home. Sensors pinged across the valley. Radar sweeps came back clean, but her instincts told a different story. Thermal readouts spiked faintly along a ridgeline. Too regular to be wildlife. Too deliberate to ignore. Lightning, I've got anomalous heat signatures. Northeast sector, 3 clicks from crash beacon. Vaughn cut in sharply. How the hell are you reading thermal that fine from here? Madison ignored the question. Count 12. Moving fast. Armed. Silence filled the comms as reality sank in. Copy, Vaughn finally said. Lightning, 2 and 3 shift east. Establish deterrence. Shadow 4 hold overwatch. Engines howled as the formation pivoted through the canopy. Madison spotted faint smoke. Her HUD tagged the signal beacon from the downed pilot. Time was bleeding away. Downed bird, this is Shadow 4. Confirm condition. The response crackled through static. This is Price. Shoulder dislocated. Movement limited. Hostiles closing. Madison scanned terrain fast. A natural clearing lay southeast, hidden but large enough for rotor extraction. She locked coordinates, rattling them off. Downed bird vector to coordinates 40 degrees, 0.61 north, 84 degrees, 0.29 west. Clearing visible from overhead. There was a pause. Copy. I see it. Moving now. Above Vaughn and Lightning, 2 roared over the tree line, sonic booms rattling branches. The hostile group scattered, scrambling for cover. The Raptors circled like predators, forcing them back. Minutes stretched, every second heavy. Finally, a rescue helo thundered in low blades, chopping the air. The crew repelled, hauling Jason Price aboard. Package secure. Exfil in progress, came the helo's report. Relief flooded the channel. Lightning flight wheeled away. Mission accomplished. Back at the base, wheels screeched onto concrete. The jets taxied into line canopies, lifting. Ground crews swarmed, guiding them into position. Madison climbed down slowly. Boots hit tarmac, knees steady. She had saved a man's life but exposed herself more than she ever wanted. In the debriefing room, the air was sharp with tension. Roar stood at the head of the table. Vaughn leaned back in her chair, arms folded, eyes locked on Madison. The conversation pressed in fast. "You knew things you shouldn't," Vaughn said flatly. "Thermal integration, tactical coordination. That's not maintenance knowledge." Madison stayed quiet, helmet resting in her lap. Roar opened his mouth, but Vaughn's gaze shifted. Her eyes narrowed at Madison's wrist. "Wait, what is that?" Madison stiffened. Her sleeve had slipped back, revealing ink. Wings etched around a lightning bolt. Below it, letters and numbers, TG-0912. The room froze. Roar's voice dropped. "That mark, that's a Top Gun class designation." His eyes locked on her. "Class of 2012. 9th graduate." The words hung heavy, disbelief and recognition mixing. Vaughn's lips parted in shock. "That can't be," she muttered. "Top Gun doesn't just lose people. They track every graduate." Silence pressed into the room. Roar reached for his tablet, pulling records fast. Data filled the screen, archive files, long thought closed. One name glared from the list, Lieutenant Madison Hail. Call sign Spectre. Graduated top of her class. Youngest in program history. Declared missing 11 years ago. The evidence was undeniable. The mechanic, the ghost, the woman sitting before them. She wasn't just a fill-in pilot. She was a legend who had vanished from the sky. And now, without warning, Spectre was back. The debrief ended with silence heavier than steel. But questions lingered and command demanded answers. Within hours, an investigation team assembled in a secure room. Files, unsealed documents spread across the table. At the center, the fatal training accident from the year 2012. The one that had driven Madison into exile. The official version had been brief. A wingman dead. A young flight leader blamed herself and resigned. But the classified records told a different story. Hydraulic system failure. Catastrophic and unrecoverable. Kelly Ward's jet had been doomed before the exercise even began. Telemetry showed the truth. When the failure hit, Madison's aggressive maneuver pulled the rest of the formation clear. 4 aircraft avoided collision only because she acted in seconds. Briggs read the data aloud, voice tight. She didn't cause the death. She prevented 4 more. The room shifted with realization. Colonel Roar turned to her, eyes steady. "You carried guilt for something that was never yours to bear." Madison stared at the table, hands clenched. 11 years of silence unraveled in her chest. She had believed she was reckless. The record showed she had been decisive. But another name kept appearing in the files, Commander Blake Turner. His notes, his complaints, his accusations. Turner had painted her as arrogant, too young, too aggressive, unfit for leadership. And he had done it loudly at every chance. Performance reviews revealed his own decline. Poor judgment, failing scores, threatened removal from flight status. The accident had given him a weapon. By pointing at Madison, Turner deflected attention from himself. By branding her reckless, he disguised his own shortcomings. And the Navy, desperate for answers, had let him. A hearing was called. Madison walked into the chamber, flight jacket folded over her arm. Turner sat at the opposite table, uniform crisp, jaw set. The panel began with facts, telemetry, maintenance logs, witness testimony. Each line chipped away at Turner's story. Finally, Roar slid the hydraulic failure report across the table. Black and white. System defect unrelated to tactical decision. Turner's face paled. He tried to interrupt, voice strained. She pushed beyond safe limits. Everyone knew it. But the panel cut him short. Everyone didn't know it. "You said it," one officer replied. "And your fitness reports prove your motive." The evidence was inescapable. Turner's silence spoke louder than words. His career ended in that room, not with drama, but with collapse. The burden he had placed on Madison shifted back where it belonged. When it was over, Madison stepped outside into the cold air. She felt no triumph, only exhaustion. Justice had come too late for Kelly. 2 days later, she drove to the small cemetery outside Dayton. Leaves stirred across the stones as she carried a helmet in her hands. Kelly Ward's name was etched in gray granite. Madison knelt, setting the helmet against the marker. Her voice was low, steady. "I've been hiding long enough." The wind carried the words away. She touched the stone once, then stood tall. The weight of exile no longer chained her. When the call came, she was ready. Naval Air Station Fallon requested her presence. A new program was waiting. They called it the Spectre Initiative, a project to train pilots who could think beyond doctrine. Pilots who could adapt in chaos the way she had. The flight line buzzed as she arrived. 12 young aviators stood in formation. Crisp uniforms, bright eyes. They straightened when she approached. Colonel Rohr introduced her with formality. Lieutenant Commander Madison Hail. Call sign Spectre. She will lead your training. The young pilots whispered her name like legend. They had heard the stories, the myths of the one who vanished. Now the myth stood before them. Madison looked at their faces, eager, untested, full of fire. She breathed deep, steadying herself. No more running, she thought. Her voice carried across the line. You're here because someone believes you can be more than standard. My job is to prove them right. Vaughn stood nearby, arms crossed, watching with respect. The woman she had once threatened with a court-martial was now her mentor. The transformation was complete. Engines thundered in the distance, Raptors preparing for flight. One bird split from the line, screaming skyward. The roar shook the ground. Madison lifted her gaze, visor tucked under her arm. She saw herself reflected in the steel and fire of that climb, the pilot she once was, and the leader she had become. Some legends don't vanish. They wait in silence, hidden in plain sight until the world needs them again.